Huh? Oh, paycheck. Nice, I'm gonna save that. Well, I guess you could use a new hat. Ooh, another paycheck. I'll save this. Well, I guess you could use new shoes. Looking good. Ooh, another paycheck. I'll save this one for myself for sure. Well, you're pretty old, so I guess you could use a colonoscopy. Now that's looking pretty good. Whoa, that's a lot of money. This I'm gonna save for sure. Right? Shit. I don't even know how to start this video. But yeah, I'm gonna supercharge my Miata. And if you're not familiar with what that is, I'm basically going to boost the engine to make significantly more power. Which is kind of crazy because when I bought this car a year ago, I was just intending to learn how to do some basic maintenance and learn how to work on a car and enjoy an older analog enthusiast car. But it's quite funny to me how rapidly I fell down this rabbit hole. From, hey, let me just learn how to do an oil change, to let me rip apart my suspension and upgrade it, to now, as of last week, let me learn how to rebuild my totaled car by myself with no experience with any bodywork whatsoever. And now this week, I'm boosting my car to go faster. Like, it's hilarious to me how fast this happened. But I actually have been thinking about boosting this car for a little bit and researching it quite heavily, but I didn't get serious about it until this car got totaled and I collected insurance money. And that's part of the reason why in my past few videos, I've been so focused on trying to get the highest payout possible and then also pocket that instead of just paying a body shop to repair it, so that I can take that money and put it into a supercharger, which is what I succeeded in doing. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the supercharger that I picked out from Track Dog Racing, the reasons I'm boosting this car, the reason I didn't pick turbocharging, which is still a good option, and some of the specs that I chose. But before all that, let me actually just bring you along as I get to visit Track Dog Racing to pick up the kit, chat with the owners, and also take some cool film pictures while I was there. Today is officially the day. I'm here at Track Dog Racing to pick up my supercharger. Never ever thought I'd be doing something like this just a year ago, so it was pretty exciting. So it was a pretty fascinating experience to actually check out the shop and pick Dan's brain about all things Miatas. This is my first time seeing any sort of aftermarket Miata company, so it's really cool to see all the work they do in-house, all the supplies that they have, and just especially the development cars that are just sitting there. It's also one of the rare times I've had the opportunity to actually talk to someone who's so well versed in Miatas and Miata performance. So I stayed there for literally hours just picking Dan's brain about everything I could think about. And it was also cool to just learn what it takes to operate a shop like this, as well as the development work that has to go into making these supercharger kits. So it was a really cool and eye-opening learning experience. So after taking up way too much of their time, I let them get back to assembling the kit and going through their audit log to make sure that all the items were there. And so while I wandered the shop, I had the idea to pull out my film camera. I've used to do a lot of fine art photography before I got into cars, so I thought it'd be kind of a cool idea to blend the two a little. So there's a lot to unpack here, but what I'm going to try to do is break it up into two categories. The first being turbo versus supercharger and why I picked the supercharger. The second being the specific kit I picked and why I picked it. So turbo versus supercharger. And before I say anything else, I don't actually have that strong of opinion. This is more of the pros and cons that matched what I was looking for. And on top of that, I have never driven a turbo Miata. So take it for what it's worth. Everything I'm talking about is basically just what I found on the internet. So in order to break down the 3 reasons I picked the supercharger over the turbo, I need to explain that my goal with this car is to boost the car and make it faster and also learn a bit more about engine performance, but also balance that goal with reliability and simplicity, because I enjoy driving this car far more than I actually enjoy working on it. So that played a big role in how I thought through these decisions. So the first is the ease of install of the supercharger. From the research I've understood, the Roadtrix kit is a little bit simpler than a turbo kit, which makes the install a bit more easier. With the turbo kit, you're actually using the exhaust gases to spin the turbo to push air into the engine. And when you do that, that means you're actually routing the exhaust kind of back into the engine bay, and you have all of that heat building up. So there's more heat management that you have to deal with in the engine bay, and there's more plumbing with the extra cooling and the oiling system you need to add for the turbo that you also need to drill into the oil pan. And I would like to avoid all that complication if possible. And from what I've understood, the fact that there's less involved with the install and that there's less heat management issues makes this a generally more reliable option. And also on top of the fact that because there's less to install, it's just easier. There's less plumbing, there's less stuff you're working with. So I like that option a lot because this is the first time I've ever modified an engine in any way. The second reason is a little bit more subjective, but it's the power band. I really like this car as a naturally aspirated motor with no turbo or supercharger. I like the predictable linear power that it gives you. The higher up in the rev range you are, you have a very clear and predictable idea of how much power you're gonna get, and it's gonna be as instant as an engine can be when you press the throttle. But with the turbocharger, that power band is not linear because the turbo spools up and will suddenly add boost to the engine. So you get more of a bumpy power band, which means it's less linear and a little bit less predictable. And The Rotrex kit actually maintains a very linear power band, a lot like a naturally aspirated motor. And from the reviews I've read online, it kind of feels like you just have a bigger naturally aspirated motor in the car, which is exactly what I was kind of looking for. And a side benefit of that is because you don't have a big power boost in the low end of the rev range, you're not putting as much low end torque into the engine as you would with like a Rotrex supercharger kit. And that means, although you make a little less power low end, you maintain more reliability because I'm keeping the stock internals for now in this engine. And then finally, the exhaust sounds more like a naturally aspirated motor than a turbo setup. So with this kit, I can maintain the predictable linear power band that I like. I can maintain most of the naturally aspirated kind of sound that I like. And I can get a bit more reliability with the stock engine internals because it doesn't have as much low-end torque. And if I want that much power, all I have to do is rev it out, which is something I like about this car as it is stock. So it still gives you that fun of revving out the car to get that reward at the top end with all that power. And finally, the third reason is that this particular kit works with the stock ECU. My car is less than 25 years old, so at least here in the state of Texas, it still has to go through yearly inspections, and as part of that process, they have to read your ECU to check for engine codes. And if you go to a standalone ECU to control everything, you can't do that. You don't pass inspection. And I don't want to have to deal with undoing some of this install for the next 2-3 years every time I have inspection roll around. And so the fact that this kit comes with piggyback fuel and timing cards, which are basically plug and play devices that attach to the stock ECU and help modify the engine tune to compensate for the extra boost that's going into it, means that this will still pass my inspection every year and I don't have to think about that hassle. After 25 years, I might consider going standalone if I keep going down this rabbit hole at the pace I'm going. But again, this kind of ties back to simplicity and ease of use. I don't really have to worry about tuning the car with the standalone ECU, and I don't have to worry about my yearly inspections for the next few years. And from what I've understood, by sticking with the fuel and timing cards over the standalone, I'm only sacrificing, I think, 5 to 10% of the possible maximum power. So it's a small hit in power for a big increase in ease of life. So those are kind of all the personal reasons that I picked this Rotrex supercharger kit over the turbocharger. Again, nothing wrong with a turbo, and I really want to experience one day. But I'm so dead set on at least trying to keep this as simple as possible, given that I'm already messing with the engine a bit here. So now about the supercharger itself. There's basically two types of superchargers that at least I know exist. There's the most common type, I think, known as the twin screw or the roots type supercharger, which is one you think of when you think of a supercharged car. You know that like crazy battle cry whine? That's not what I got. Instead, there's another type known as a centrifugal supercharger. And I'm not going to get too nitty-gritty into the engineering differences between the two, but basically the twin screw has much bigger packaging because it's kind of like two long screws that interlope, whereas the centrifugal supercharger is essentially kind of like a belt-driven turbo. And with that centrifugal setup, you happen to get a little less lower end torque, but a bit more higher end torque. So again, it kind of leads to that feeling of a bigger naturally aspirated motor rather than just a big beefy supercharged motor. Honestly, I wouldn't have minded having a twin screw type supercharger. It would have actually been pretty cool, but I do get more reliability with this. And also there's no more twin screw superchargers available brand new for the Miata. So that actually plays a big role in this decision. But anyway, onto the kit that I bought. So the name of this kit is a Rotrex supercharger kit. And the Rotrex supercharger, like I mentioned, is a centrifugal type supercharger. And this kit is put together by Trackdog Racing. So I think, yeah, you can go out and buy that Rotrex supercharger unit, but you also have to go and figure out everything else you need to buy to actually install it into your specific car. And that's exactly what Trackdog Racing has done. They've put in all that work and assembled the complete kit with a comprehensive, I think it's like 140-page booklet of instructions. This kit has literally every single nut and bolt you could need to install this car on this particular Miata, as well as accompanying pictures for every step of the way. And so this goes back to one of my original goals with this install, is simplicity. I don't want this install to take too much time. I just want to get to driving the supercharged car, and I don't want to hate myself while I install it too. So that's why I picked this particular kit as well, because from all the reviews I've read and all the research I've done on Reddit and internet forums, this is the most comprehensive and put together kit. And that is a big deal for me, especially because I don't know what I'm doing. This is my first time modifying the performance of a car like this, so I don't have all the know-how yet on how a complete supercharger system works and every part involved. I'm sure if you were well versed in this, you probably could assemble a kit by yourself from kind of scrap parts or parts online, which I've seen one Redditor post about. But I don't have that know-how, so that's why I'm more than happy to pay a premium to buy a complete kit with a complete set of instructions. So this is kind of like the best way for me to learn how these things work as well. So that's why I picked the Track Dog Racing Rotrex Supercharger kit. Now inside that kit, there's a couple of different options. So they offer primarily two different sizes of superchargers, and I picked the smaller one specifically because I want it to be as reliable as possible with stock internals. From the advice I've got from Dan, the bigger one is a little bit more oriented towards someone who's doing an engine rebuild with forged internals that are stronger. So for my high mileage stock engine, I picked the smaller one. Then from there, the only other real option was the choice between standalone ECU and stock ECU. And like I mentioned, I picked out the fuel and timing cards, which are plug-and-play devices that work with the stock ECU. That way I can have a simpler install, and I don't have to worry too much about inspection and any headaches with that, at the cost of just a few horsepower. So that's why I picked this kit. And so finally that brings me to this channel and the future plans for this car. So the car is still wrecked, and I do have the new body panel back there. So I'm gonna be mainly focused on fixing the wreck right now, but kind of maybe at the same time or right after that, I'm gonna first have to pull the engine to do some maintenance to prep for the supercharger. So with that supercharger, I bought an upgraded, stronger clutch that can actually support that newer power that I'm gonna be making, and a lighter flywheel. And so that means that I'll need to do a clutch job in order to do the supercharger install. And I'm kind of tired of working under this car. And from everything I've read online about a clutch job, it's kind of just a pain in the butt to be underneath the car, bench pressing the transmission back into place and trying to line it up. And so after a lot of research, I decided that the best option for me is actually just to learn how to pull the entire engine and transmission out of the car to make that clutch job easier. And so with the engine out, I can also easily reseal the engine. A lot of these seals are probably 22 years old, and I still think I have a few nagging oil leaks. So to make sure that I'm installing the supercharger on a clean and healthy engine, I can make sure that I'm taking care of all of that maintenance while I'm at it, and as well as just clean and degrease the whole engine and engine bay so that everything just feels like it's a nice, clean, fresh start before I install the supercharger. So I have a lot on my plate. I need to learn how to rebuild the wrecked car, pull out an engine, and then install the supercharger. So there's a lot in store for this channel, and I really could not be more excited. Maybe my car getting totaled wasn't the worst thing after all. But yeah, so that's everything I got. It's gonna be a pretty hectic next few months, I think. Doing all of this work and then also making videos while I'm at it. But I know y'all enjoy it, and I find it pretty fulfilling too. So I'm gonna keep at it. In the meantime, you can always support the channel with the Patreon that's linked somewhere up here and in the description. And also join the community Discord, which is linked in the bio. So thank you for the support, and I'll see you in the next one. I think I'll just shove it in.
Going away.